tattoos like that, and she thinks she can use our firing range. A group of young soldiers burst into laughter when they spotted the woman in civilian clothes rolling up her sleeves, revealing a strange tattoo on her forearm. Probably just got out of basic training. But when an officer stepped closer, seeing the tattoo more clearly, he immediately whispered into his radio, "Stand down, that's her. Meet Jessa Wren, 36 years old. Short hair, sun-weathered skin, lean build, a woman of few words." She'd returned to Redstone Base as a civilian weapons technician. Nobody remembered who she really was. She wore an old brown jacket, her left arm bearing a gray-black tattoo, a hawk with spread wings, code number 032K beneath it. On her first day at the firing range, several young soldiers noticed the tattoo when she was installing rifle scopes. Is that some kind of gang tattoo? Probably just a mechanic with too much free time, making up war stories. One soldier even secretly photographed the tattoo and sent it to their group chat. "White Phoenix girl just landed at base," then added a laughing emoji. The mockery spread quickly. During lunch, whispers followed her everywhere. "Did you see that fake military tattoo? She's trying too hard to look tough. Bet she got it done at some strip mall parlor." Jessa heard every word. She said nothing. Instead, just kept eating her sandwich, eyes focused on her plate. But those who looked closely could see her jaw tighten slightly, the only sign that their words had any effect. Later that afternoon, she was assigned to calibrate the range's targeting system. As she worked, adjusting delicate mechanisms with practiced precision, more soldiers gathered to watch. "Look at her acting like she knows what she's doing. Probably watched some YouTube tutorials. My girlfriend could do better than that." The laughter grew louder. Jessa's hands never wavered, never shook. She continued her work with the steady focus of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before, in conditions these soldiers couldn't imagine. But the worst part wasn't the mockery. It was the complete dismissal. To them, she was invisible. Just another civilian contractor trying to play soldier. They had no idea they were looking at a ghost who'd been officially dead for 8 years. CTA Comment Act 1. Have you ever seen someone mocked for their past? Type, "I've witnessed it." During the test firing session, the automated system malfunctioned. Jessa stepped forward to inspect it, speaking in a quiet voice. "This range is off calibration. Let me readjust the targeting parameters." A fresh recruit laughed out loud. "She's acting like some kind of professional sniper." Jessa didn't respond. She simply opened the control panel and began making micro adjustments that would have taken most technicians hours to figure out. Her fingers moved with the muscle memory of someone who'd done this under pressure, real pressure. Within 2 minutes, the display screen stabilized perfectly. A commanding officer, watching from nearby, asked with genuine surprise, "Where did you learn calibration skills like that?" "I didn't learn it. I used it in 20-knot sandstorms." The officer's eyebrows raised. That wasn't the answer of someone who'd learned from manuals. Moments later, another group of soldiers noticed the tattoo when she pulled up her sleeve to wipe sweat from her forehead. One of them muttered, "Hawk, code 032K. Wait, could that be?" His voice trailed off as recognition dawned. At that exact moment, a convoy of vehicles carrying Colonel Ross, former commander of Phoenix Recon Unit, drove past the firing range. Ross glanced over casually, then froze when he saw the tattoo. His face went pale. He immediately stepped out of his vehicle and grabbed his radio. "Stand down, that's her." The soldiers nearby turned around, confusion written across their faces. "Her? Who's her? Wait, is she the last survivor of Operation Kilo Dust? The one who was listed as missing in action? That's impossible." But Colonel Ross was already walking toward Jessa, his stride purposeful and respectful. The same man who'd commanded hundreds of soldiers was approaching this quiet woman like she was visiting royalty. The young soldiers who'd been laughing minutes before now stood in stunned silence. "Ma'am," Ross said, his voice carrying the weight of 8 years of regret. "I never thought I'd see you again." Jessa looked up from the rifle she was cleaning. Her expression remained neutral, but there was something in her eyes, a flicker of pain perhaps, or forgiveness. "Colonel," she replied simply. "The records, they said you were killed in action. How are you here?" "Records are wrong sometimes. People make mistakes. Her words were matter of fact, but they carried the weight of someone who'd been abandoned by the very system she'd served. The soldiers who'd been mocking her tattoo now realized they'd been laughing at a memorial. The hawk with spread wings wasn't decoration, it was a grave marker. For her team, for herself, for the woman who'd officially died 8 years ago, but kept living anyway. CTA Comment Act 2. If you've ever laughed at someone, then realized you were wrong, type, I feel regret. That evening, classified files were reopened for the first time in 8 years. Jessa Wren, call sign Falcon Zero, had been the reconnaissance sniper for Operation Kilo Dust, abandoned due to a coordinate error that marked her team as enemy combatants. She'd been listed as MIA for 8 years. After years of living in anonymity, she'd voluntarily left the military because she didn't want the media exploiting a truth that would destroy careers and expose operational failures. All that remained was the tattoo, the unit code that her teammates had inked onto her arm, believing none of them would survive to tell their story. The next morning, Colonel Ross called an emergency assembly of the entire base. The woman you've been seeing around the firing range, he began, his voice carrying across the silent formation, is not just another civilian contractor. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. She once kept a 3-person reconnaissance team alive in the desert for 48 hours without resupply, while under enemy fire, while the rest of us thought she was dead. The soldiers who'd been laughing at her tattoo now stood at attention, their faces burning with shame. And she was forgotten because of a mistake that was never hers to make. When Jessa walked into the assembly hall, every soldier rose to their feet. The same people who'd mocked her 24 hours earlier now stood in respect for someone they'd completely misunderstood. One young soldier, his voice barely above a whisper, asked, "Why didn't you tell us who you were from the beginning?" Jessa's response was typical of who she was. Because words don't keep people alive. Only right actions at the right time can do that. She looked around the room at faces that had transformed from mockery to respect to shame. Besides, she continued, I didn't come back for recognition. I came back to make sure you kids don't repeat the mistakes that got good people killed. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was reverent. Colonel Ross stepped forward again. The Army owes you an apology, Sergeant Wren. Multiple apologies. I'm not a sergeant anymore, Colonel. I'm just Jessa. You'll always be a sergeant to me, to all of us. But Jessa shook her head. Ranks are for people who need to prove something. I already proved what I needed to prove, to the only people who mattered. She touched the tattoo on her arm, the hawk with spread wings, the code 032K. My team knew who I was. That's enough. The young soldiers who'd photographed her tattoo and shared it in group chats now understood what they'd been looking at. Not a fake military tattoo from a strip mall, but a memorial, a promise, a bond forged in combat and sealed with ink. The woman they'd dismissed as a wannabe was actually the real thing. Someone who'd lived through experiences they couldn't imagine, who'd sacrificed everything for people who'd forgotten her name. And she'd never asked for credit, never demanded recognition, never even corrected their assumptions. She'd simply shown up, done her job, and let her actions speak for themselves. CTA Comment Act 3. If you owe someone a long overdue apology, write, I owe a debt. Act 4, Quiet Ending, Inspiration, 8 o'clock. 10 o'clock, vertical bar, approximately 450 words. Jessa declined every offer to return to active duty. I don't need rank. I just need to know these kids won't make the same mistakes that got good people killed. Every afternoon, she continued working at the firing range, adjusting scopes, cleaning weapons, calibrating targeting systems. Nobody asked her to. Nobody ordered her to. She just did it, because that's who she was. The young soldiers who'd once mocked her now watched in silence as she worked. They began to understand that real strength doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand recognition. It just shows up and does what needs to be done. One group of trainees sewed a small patch onto their tactical notebooks. 032K, still here. When Jessa saw the patch, she simply nodded. No tears, no speeches, just acknowledgement. Later that week, the same soldiers who'd laughed at her tattoo approached her during break time. Ma'am, one of them said, we owe you an apology. No, Jessa replied, not looking up from the rifle she was cleaning. You owe it to yourselves to be better. How do we do that? By remembering that everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. And some of those battles were fought so you could sleep safely at night. She finally looked up, meeting their eyes. The tattoo isn't about me. It's about the people who didn't come home. When you see someone carrying that kind of weight, you don't laugh. You say thank you. The soldiers nodded, understanding flooding their faces. From that day forward, Jessa became the unofficial guardian of the firing range. She never gave orders, never raised her voice, never demanded respect, but she earned it, every day, with quiet competence and unshakable dignity. The kind of respect that can't be commanded or demanded, only earned through actions that speak louder than words. CTA Comment Act 4, type, I will live honorably. If you believe the most respectable people are often the quietest ones. Jessa Wren didn't demand her reputation back. She simply demanded respect, through actions. Some tattoos aren't meant to show off. They're meant to help survivors recognize each other when laughter drowns out truth. And when a colonel steps out of his vehicle, stops everything and orders, stand down, that's her. You realize that sometimes just a tattoo is actually an entire piece of history that nobody dared to tell. The real warriors don't need to prove they're warriors. They just show up and do the work, quietly, competently, without fanfare. And when the truth finally comes out, as it always does, the people who laughed learn that respect isn't about what you can see on the surface. It's about what someone has endured beneath it. Remember, everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Some of those battles were fought so you could sleep safely at night. The next time you see someone carrying invisible weight, don't laugh, say thank you. Say thank.